All right, welcome back. Joining me right now is Ikemesit. Effiong, who is the partner at SBM Intelligence, and we will be looking at the purple of issues. Hello, Ikemesit, and welcome to the program. Ikemesit, please, can you unmute your audio so that I can hear you? Can you hear me now?
Hi, Nancy.
Yes,
I can hear you.
Yes,
now.
I can hear you now. Ikemesit, now let's get into the business. First of all, let me start with the free fall of the Naira we've seen at least in the last few weeks. Now the Naira is oscillating around 900 to 1,000 Naira. What do you think can be done? Are you hopeful with the news coming around from the officials around the $10 billion that we're expecting, $7 billion in LNG, dividends, then $3 billion in borrowings? What do you think?
Well, the challenge, right, with the currency was that it was always a supply issue, right? And so, all of the recent announcements, right, around the strain, as it were, on LNG revenue, obviously the bilateral, the multilateral loan injection, right, and all of those things, clearly signifies that, that supply constraints issue is being addressed. The only real concern I suppose I have is how sustainable it is, right? Because you've got a situation now where if the backlog of forex demand, right, is dealt with, you still have fresh demand, right, in order to address, right, and not doing much to ramp up the tax generation picture, the overall revenue generation picture, decoupling our ability, right, to generate forex in this country from oil income. Those are sort of more mid-term, long-term issues that need to be addressed in order for predictability and certainty, right, to prevail in the currency market. But at least for the short term, probably for the rest of the year through Q1 and maybe the early parts of Q2 of 2024, it appears as though all of the measures that have been put in place will largely take care of the supply issue, at least for those time, at least within that time frame.
Are you also seeing some kind of green light in terms of foreign investment, especially as the German Chancellor was in Nigeria just a few days ago? He visited President Tinubu on a Sunday. He has promised a stronger business relationship with Nigeria. Of course, the issue around power, we know about Siemens, the relationship Nigeria has, the federal government, with the company for power. So are you a bit encouraged with what you're seeing around partnerships from nations abroad?
Well, my default with respect to these things is usually to wait and see, right? Schultz, Schultz visited Buhari, right? Merkel visited Buhari as well. I think, German chancellors have made it another practice, right, to check in with Nigerian leaders. Obviously, the Russia-Ukraine conflict and also the uncertainty, right? The uncertainty in the Middle East, right, has meant that, oil and gas future prices, right, have remained at somewhat elevated levels, right, in international markets. And with the approach of the winter in the Northern Hemisphere, right, to a lesser extent North America, but primarily Europe, is looking to ensure that there is certainty. I mean, Schultz himself said, right, during that press conference that I had with President Tinubu, right, that maintaining gas at an affordable price, right, is a deep priority for him. And as well as other EU leaders, you've got the Spanish Prime Minister and the Italian Prime Minister, who have also visited North African countries recently, important, right, oil and gas producers, right, in that part of the continent. And obviously, this is really a supply protection, right, effort on the part of, the major European economies. It will really depend, whether Nigeria is able to leverage on this situation in order to advantageously move the national economy forward will really depend on what we do at home, right? I think it's clear that there's enough appetite in Paris, in Brussels, and also in Berlin for engagement with, Nigeria and with other West African and other North African partners. But, sorting out the ease of doing business, the regulatory certainty situation right at home are two critical endpoints. And obviously, there's also a tie into, forex management, right? Going back to the other part of our conversation. So the predictability of the investment cases for these big ticket, right, projects, right, around LNG, around power, to a lesser extent, right, around infrastructure, right, is such that foreign investors see Nigeria as an appealing investment situation, right? Until all of those things happen, well, there's to move the needle. A lot of the homework, right, in order to push this forward, still depends on what we do domestically here as well.
I join you in also exhibiting cautious optimism, because I also remember that during the last administration, there was an interaction with former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who was there for, I think Angela Merkel was in power for like close to 10 years, if I'm not mistaken. And issues around power, gas came up, but we still did not see it move the needle. But let's hope that there's a different political will this time, because there's a new administration in town. And this president has the semblance, or he's been saying at least the right things around reform, around stronger political will to get things done. But now let's move over to the reports that your company also released. A very, very interesting one, Africa Instability Report, where you are placing Nigeria in a stable zone. Those numbers are very interesting, and those colors are very interesting. You have safe, you have stable, where Nigeria falls in, vulnerable, warning, critical, and red watch. So, Ikemesit, if you're still with me, please, can you speak to me about the report and why you and your colleagues came up with this report at this time? Okay, it seems that the network froze on both of us there. Let's quickly take a break and see. Okay, Ikemesit, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly now.
Okay, good. So speak to me about this report.
Okay, so what we tried to do with Akiri was that we tried to create a top line and for investors and other significant economic participants who are looking to invest right across the continent, right? We all know with the regressing democratic picture across the continent, we obviously had those coups in Mali and Burkina Faso and Guinea leading up to this year. And this year we've had, right, military interventions in Niger and Gabon, right? The scepter of democratic regression and the era of coup d'etat, Central Africa obviously being known as right, well into the 70s and the 80s and also the early 90s, is firmly back in frame. And so we wanted to create a tool that helps, investors who either have a limited picture of Africa or who may have a lot of understanding about, African political, social, and economic issues, but just want a top line in order to have a very, clear and instant picture, right, of how Africans are doing democratically and also from a regulatory standpoint, which are the African countries to sort of be concerned about and which are the African countries that are doing fairly okay right now. And so what we did with Akiri was that we ranked, there are 48 sub-Saharan African countries, but we excluded Mauritania, right, for certain reasons which we outlined in the report, including its closer affinity to North Africa. So we ranked 47 sub-Saharan African countries across 4 broad categories. So first, the state of their leadership and their governance. Are they a democracy? Are they an autocracy? Or are they, do they conduct elections, but do their leaders exhibit authoritarian tendencies? We also obviously looked at the economic picture. I mean, I'm talking to you on a business and an economic show. So obviously the economy is at play. Also, stable economy and economic stability. So looking at the economy is obviously very important. History was also, right, one of the key indicators that we looked at, right? So, have these countries experienced coups or violent military takeovers or other sort of politically destabilizing events in the past? Obviously that's a useful indicator for knowing whether, a country is susceptible to future violent regime takeovers. And then the final bit was, geopolitics. We're in a more active geopolitical environment. Witness what's going on in Eastern Europe. Witness what's going on with the US-China relationship in the Indo-Pacific, and obviously the unfortunate situation in the Middle East. So what level of big power geopolitical interest do these African countries attract? We know that there are some African countries that are more and geopolitically aligned from a foreign and an economic policy standpoint to, global powers. And so we tried to measure those, right, and, under that indicator. So that's basically what we tried to do with Akiri, so that investors, anybody looking to make an investment decision in Africa that sort of wants a first line of how a country is generally doing can just pick up the report, and it gives them a very condensed but also a very rich, right, a broad, right, insight framework into those countries.
Okay, finally, Ikemesit, what I'm seeing here, the rankings, the numbers, the rankings that you gave, 70%, 62, and all of that, does it include all the macro indicators around geopolitics, economics, economy, as well as leadership and governance, or is it just on that? Because I am seeing the full country rankings, and I'm even surprised that Niger is not on Red Watch, but on critical. And other countries that we've seen Kuda, Chad, Sudan are on Red Watch. Niger is not there. Niger is on critical. So I'm wondering why that was. And of course, the countries that are safe here, Botswana, Mauritius. Let me expand this thing. My glasses also. Perhaps I need under glasses on this. South Africa, perhaps my optician has to do on that. Seychelles, Cape Verde, Lesotho. Of course, this country is agreeably so, safe. There are some stable democracies also here in Africa. But speak to me about some of those concerns that I've raised. Why is Niger not on Red Watch? And does this ranking involve all of that?
Yes, it does involve all of that, right? So, each country has a category score, so a separate score on leadership, economy, geopolitics, and history, right? But there's also a composite score. So the thing with Niger is, Niger may be on Red Watch, but Niger is on the really, really low end of the red. Sorry, Niger is on critical rather, yeah. But it's on the very, very low end of critical, right? Which is, pretty close to its, you'd say, Red Watch cousins. Yes, very much so, because, those countries, right, while they score very poorly on leadership and governance and, obviously, right, on history, in terms of geopolitics and the economy, there are pockets of, middling stability that sort of propped up their scores. But again, their scores are not incredibly good, to be very clear, right? And, we envisage this to be an annual index and an annual ranking. And my suspicion and my sense is that, some of those indicators may be revised, negatively, particularly for those two countries.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ikemesit, for joining me today. Let's talk again soon. Have a good day. You know why I'm smiling. You know what I remembered. Well, let's talk again soon.
Very much so.
All right. Take care.
All right. Thanks always for having me.